Yeah, we have a huge role to play. And so, when we look at this reconciliation framework, obviously it's a societal shift, it's a mental shift, and the challenge being that I think a lot of communities have said, well, the federal government came out with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they came out with all these recommendations. Where do I, as a city councillor, as a mayor, where do we even start with this process? But the general status of this topic to me is that start anywhere. Start with a conversation. Pick a couple of action items and move forward on those. And so I sit on the Aboriginal Relations Committee at the Fraser Valley Regional District, and we coordinate and work with and create policy with 32 independent First Nations bands throughout the Fraser Valley. So that's from the border with Abbotsford and Langley to the north end of Harrison Lake, to the Douglas Band, all the way up the Fraser Canyon, and all the way to the east gate of Manning Park. And in that, though, Chilliwack has this huge role to play because we're central to all of that. And the health of Indigenous communities within our municipal boundaries and surrounding us, and also urban Indigenous populations that don't live on reserve, the future of those peoples are directly relational to the successes and to the prosperity of all Chilliwack residents. And they're not separate. We can find a future together that's awesome, that benefits both communities, that recognizes culture and practice and all these other pieces, and recognizes past wrongdoings. And the ultimate goal, I think, of all of these things is that we need to have a mental societal shift. And I believe my role as a mayor, if that comes to pass, or as a city councillor currently, is to be a leader not just in policy, not just to fund transit differently or to fund a park, but is to help shape a social narrative around what kind of community do we want to be, what sort of conversations do we want to have, are we a community that's tolerant or not, or how do we move forward in those conversations. I'm excited to play a leadership role in that, and I think our community in Chilliwack could do far better, because I sit at a federal government table with a bunch of municipalities from across Canada, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I sit on an Indigenous working group there as well. And the work that cities are doing on reconciliation is phenomenal. They're the leaders. The federal government put out the framework, but cities are leading the way. Chilliwack is falling way behind. We have a role to play, and we need to start playing it.
That is a very important discussion we need to have, and particularly in Chilliwack, because in Chilliwack's boundaries alone, we have 11 Aboriginal bands, 11. And then outside in the region, there are 21. So it's very different than Vancouver, than Surrey. One of the things I want to talk about is a new piece of artwork that we're putting down in front of the Vedder Bridge. When they brought me the artwork, it said at the top, in Hulkamalem, "It is good you are here," and in English on the other side, "It is good you are here." And I felt like that was the first step towards reconciliation. I felt chills thinking, it's happening. And it's happening because of relationship, not because someone's forcing you and saying, you need to get together, you need to have a meeting, you need to talk about what forgiveness is, you need to talk about what restitution is, you need to talk about... No, there was none of the you need to. It was born out of love and respect. I do think it starts with relationship. If you don't know someone, if you don't know their story, how on earth do you have reconciliation? We understand hurt and we understand pain, and yes, there needs to be reconciliation with Stalo and with other Aboriginal groups, and there's much, much more that needs to be done. And I think that any human being that lives in our community should be looking to build those bridges instead of building walls. We're all the same inside. Every single one of us is the same. We all hurt. We all have hurts. We all have ways that we've been wounded. Let's work to make us better and make us whole.
Quite frankly, we have fallen down with that. In the last 7 years, we've sat down with the 9 chiefs that touch our borders twice. It all starts with collaboration, sitting down, sharing a meal, having a conversation, and that has been lacking. I talk with the younger chiefs that understand the past, but understand they have a future. If they're doing a development on whichever road it is, the city has a responsibility through service agreements to make sure there's enough water going into their subdivision, and of course sewage coming out. It's a partnership, and it's been broken, and it needs to be fixed, and it's going to take baby steps, but I am willing to do that. Through CHC, we've enacted a task team called the Opening Doors Task Team. So that's through the health and social side of the house, and that's working really well. Just with working with Stolo Health and First Nations Health. For me, it's not about us and them. It's we, and we have to work together.